Hey all, today the guest on my talk show is Debansu Saha, who's actually currently working in Amazon with about 3 decades of experience in the IT industry. He started off his career with the government sector and then moved to the corporate world. If you look at his academic records, he's done his BSc in physics and chemistry and then MSc in mathematics and biology. It's very varied, but the amount of contributions he's given to the IT industry is immense. Please do take time and listen to this talk show, and I'm sure you'll have some great takeaways while he talks about his career growth. He talks about how he started off during the dinosaur age and still continues to survive and grow and thrive in this industry. Some of the communities he's created where people have great takeaways and learnings. And also, he also talks about recession. That's the most happening thing in the last few weeks where it's happening across the world and how do people cope up with it and how he himself has gone through certain things. So without further delay, let's go ahead and get started with talking to Debansu. Hey Debansu, welcome to Sharmila Talkies. Very good morning.
Hey Sharmila, very good morning. Nice meeting you in this forum. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Debansu, for taking time on a Sunday morning. I know you do have a very busy schedule, but thank you so much again for making time for this talk show.
No issues, no problem. I think I have been watching your talk shows for some time now, and it is inspiring, and especially I think for the newcomers to the industry. These are very helpful. Thanks for your effort towards that, and obviously thank you for thinking about me.
Oh, great. Definitely, Debansu. We've been having this conversation for quite some time, right? And finally, you were able to make some time. So thank you so much again. Since you've been watching this talk show, Debansu, you know how it kind of goes, right? So maybe if we could get started with a quick introduction about yourself, your career, how you started off into what you're doing today, we can get started from there and then take it forward.
Sure. So to borrow from one of my friends' lingo, I term myself that I come from the ages of the dinosaur. So I started my career precisely on 16th November 1994. So when I joined Government of India at Cabinet Secretariat, that was my first job. In our days, it was standard. Like you are in college. When you are approaching the end of your studies, you start getting into the employment gazettes and all, and find which are the openings there for which there is a test. So similarly, I sat for a Government of India tests, followed by an interview, then followed by a very long background verification, and finally I landed up in New Delhi with the Cabinet Secretariat. So I was there for nearly 5.5 years, then moved back to Calcutta. Okay. That was once again a thing which I was not really looking at, but then it came as an opportunity. So I moved back to Calcutta to set up the whole IT infrastructure of the Pollution Control Board. Worked there for nearly 7.5 years. When I joined, it was roughly around 16 desktop computers organization. When I left, we were the most tech-savvy in government and had our first e-governance application of the country in environmental management sector. So it was in 2004, and we had an environment management system in place. So
very interesting, Debansu. I mean, I never knew this part of it where, you worked with the government agency and then the Pollution Control Board, where you were one of the first ones to kind of set it up from a tech perspective. That's very interesting and awesome. Great.
Yeah, thanks, Sharmila. Generally, these are the places where when you get into a corporate, generally those are forgotten because these are high pace world. So yeah, suddenly I saw in those days we used to have a lot of communities, like very strong communities, and one of such communities were the Linux India user group. Okay, so both of us worked with Sandeep Bhattacharya, right? So Sandeep is in Germany these days. So Sandeep dropped an email that Yahoo is coming for an interview at Calcutta. That was a walk-in interview.
Okay.
I thought, let's explore it. So landed into the walk-in interview, got selected for the role at Yahoo at Bangalore. So that started my journey into the corporate world, and it's all the way till now. It's all learning every day. And post Yahoo, I worked for Samsung, then I worked for Amazon. Currently, I work with Amazon with the AWS business. It has been a learning journey altogether, but it's a very long journey. And I don't see it finishing very fast. That's most important.
Definitely. I mean, like it's close to 3 decades, almost 3 decades, right? It's approximately 28 years that you've been working, right? Though you were in the government sector for almost a decade, and then you moved into IT, right? But it's pretty much as I have known you, Debanshu, it's like the way I have known you is you kind of take initiatives and you explore areas that are problematic and unexplored, where temporary solutions are there, and you work, as much as I've seen you and known you, right? You work from a longer vision, right? What is a permanent solution, or how do we take it forward 1 year, 2 years, 5 years down the line, right? Most of them, it's like there's a problem. It's like, okay, what do we do right now to fix it so that it goes away now, or it doesn't reappear for another 2 days or 2 weeks or so, right? I do remember those conversations when we used to have when there are outages and we were working on the root cause analysis. You would come up with probably relook at the entire redesigning the architecture by itself, right? Instead of just instead of a temporary solution for now, this will not appear if we put probably just upgrade something or change, upgrade the software or rechange the hardware. But you spoke at an architecture level by itself, right? So I always felt you had like foresight, right? And how do we kind of eradicate the problem from the root cause so that it does not appear again at all, right? So how do you kind of develop this mindset? And since you did say, you yourself mentioned, right, you sometimes feel you're from the dinosaur age kind of stuff, right? But you still continue to work with the amount of changes that's been so volatile around the IT industry. So maybe if we can touch base around those points, Debansu, that'll be a great learning for the viewers who are listening.
Sure. So as you rightly observed, you were the change managers for us. So right. So you saw the problem of change management and how we as production engineers used to deal with those. So all changes and this change in our industry that we are in season. I think that is the only constant today. That there would be changes. Yeah. So technology landscape change, the way infrastructure change, paradigm shifts, everything is a change. Now, the business that we run will have problems because these will encounter changes. These will have users, tests changing to some technology or some product which is very popular today will become unpopular after some point in time because people's mood change, and we generally don't have much control on it. It's all the market sentiment and stuff. Now, in terms of technology, there are a lot of things that we can do. See, for example, the trait that you have brought in. When we look at a solution of a product, we have to look at the architecture if there are technical debt that the product is carrying. So if it is something around long pending technical debt, banded solutions to fix those may work for a very short period of time. But then we have to fix those technical debts. So you've been in industry for a certain amount of time. You recollect that how we used to mark those technical debts as separate long-term plan to fix those and deal with until that time, deal with the rest in a banded kind of solution. So I think industry still works that way. You identify a problem. If you see there is a technical debt, say, for example, something we are dealing with a data for which a data structure change needs to happen. And which needs to happen the persistent layer. So you can do something by building some intermediate stuff and all, but finally, our persistent layer change will fix the problem. And you need to do long-term planning to do those changes. So
Right.
That's how we balanced all the time. I think that works till now.
Okay. So how do you go about, see, when you say, you have to propose architectural changes for a permanent solution, right? It's not an easy thing because it's already set up, things are working, and something is broken for the time being, which gets fixed as a temporary solution, right? What are the pros and cons, or what are the challenges that you faced when you go ahead and propose an architecture change for a permanent solution, and how did you kind of deal with it?
There are I think there are two parts to it. One is the human factor, right? The people who designed the system, from their mindset, it will be the best system in the world.
Yep.
Okay.
It's always
probably that was the state at some point in time.
Yeah.
But with the change, that state has changed. So you need to convince the people who are behind it, that we need to fix something.
Right.
So I think this is the most complex part of it, because there you deal with the human piece of it, the human aspect of technology.
Yeah.
And the other piece is on the budget and investment, which is with the business. Though this part is kind of straightforward, but if you don't get a buy-in from the business owner, then proposing that it is difficult. Yeah. So if we can amicably solve these two parts, I think we should be there, because there always exists a technical solution for a technical problem, not the other piece of problem. Yeah.
Right. Great. Okay, got that. So basically you kind of validate with data and show the advantages of it, and convince the person who probably initially built, person or teams who built it initially. And like what you said, with changes, we do encounter new challenges for which it needs to be re-architectured, and then explain the reason for it from a business perspective to convince them and get the buy-in rather.
Absolutely.
Okay. Great. Okay. So Debansu, the other factor that you also touched base upon is around how you said you were almost close to 3 decades in the industry, right? So we see how volatile is it. Of course, both of us, you and I, have seen how many times Yahoo itself has had challenges, even like more than a decade ago that I was working there, right? There were so many layoffs suddenly happening. People were let go, people were hired and stuff like that. And in the last couple of weeks, we've seen that happening across the world, right? What is your take on this? How it is never an easy thing, right? In terms of both professional, and to a large extent, it also affects your personal lives and the entire, if you have team members moving with whom you worked for a very long time, you also end up building a personal connect to a large extent. We spend most of the time at work. So how do you either cope up if somebody in your team is impacted, or your entire team is going through some stuff, or from your personal point of view, right? I'm sure you've seen enough in your career around such ups and downs, right? What is your take on this, and how do you think anybody should be able to deal with this? How easy or difficult? It definitely is never easy, but how do you go about it? What is your take on this?
Well, Sharmila, this is a very, 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 I see, difficult question to answer, but but then I would like to answer it, because this is a time when people may need who has seen these recessions for some time. This advice may help all of them.
Sure.
First of all, what happens for a layoff and stuff is generally beyond our control, who are impacted or who are getting impacted, who are part of the game. So majority of them things are not beyond their control. So so that is the first understanding that people who are undergoing these challenges need to understand first.
It
is not your it is beyond their manager. Okay. So I have seen very difficult time during COVID. Okay. When my team itself got like halved, how we managed that. So how we managed that. And then the other perspective, so being resilient in those conditions. So if we become emotional and try to attach these reasons to individuals or the people who are interfacing us, it may be a wrong perception. most of the time, it is not the immediate person that you are interacting is the reason for what's happening with you.
Yeah.
So generally, it's a bigger play where we mostly don't have any control. But the most important technique to overcome this is remaining confident. It's not because your performance or something that you don't know that this is happening with someone. This is just because the business has a different situation where the business needs to realign, do something to make the shareholders happy and all those stuff. So, in those days, being confident, being resilient in the first part. Because you are doing your job at your current role well, it clearly says or clearly shows that you are doing your job perfectly all right. So there is no issue with you. It is the issue with business or the economic model the world follows. And we need to make some realignment. So all these phases are temporary. And generally, I haven't seen colleagues who has undergone these difficult times takes it more than 3 months for them to get another opportunity and settle back. So that's most important. These are all very temporary phases. And the other part is temporary phase beyond your control. You are not the person at fault. These are the 3 things which will make one person very confident to deal with this. The last thing that I always advocate, that staying with your community. You are aware that how we have built the large scale production engineering community, which exists today for 11th year now. So when we get together, half of these pressures which are beyond your control get shared, and we learn from each other's experience. We learn from our connections. So all these things help a person to cope with this situation in a very, very, very strong manner. So I suggest that this is the last piece. Staying with the community should be given very importance in everyone's career. So if we balance your career with some sort of professional game versus some contribution towards the community, most probably that can help one person to be stable and remain resilient to these difficult times.
Yeah, totally, Debansu. I think the last piece though you mentioned this as the last one, I think that does play a role when you're connected, because there are various other people working probably different organizations who could refer you, help you, and start that, right? The connection,
absolutely,
to a large extent, right?
Absolutely.
The basic components that you said about being more confident and resilient, and it's definitely out of your control where you can do nothing about it. But I think the important aspect of where you touched on from LSP, right? The one that you're running for a decade now, 11th year is what you just mentioned.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So I think that definitely is a huge point, though you mentioned this as the last piece of it. I think that's not the least one. That's also very equally important, like all the other points that you mentioned. So thank you so much for that, Debansu, of explaining how, you've seen people, your teams have been impacted, and how you've kind of helped people, or you've seen people get out of it. And like you mentioned, it doesn't take more than 3 months for somebody to get back, because they anyways have the talent and they're required elsewhere. And they kind of start moving on and not kind of say, why me, and keep blaming, or, it's something like from a business perspective that no individual is kind of responsible for. Great. So continuing on the same lines, right, Debansu, you mentioned about the LSP community. It appears that you were part of communities way beginning, like since your first job. That's how you kind of moved into Yahoo with Sandeep referring you, is what you mentioned. So connecting to that, how did you go about, creating communities or being a part of it and continuing to grow? I know LSP even continued during the COVID times. I remember seeing it on LinkedIn and WhatsApp groups and stuff like that. So maybe I could say this, right? How do you have that energy and push when everything is so not stable to continue with it, right? I remember sometimes the room is full, sometimes there are just 10 people. So what pushes you or keeps you going irrespective of the response that you get, that you've done 11 years until now? And I'm sure it's going to continue to grow. So what is it? What's the secret behind that, maybe?
So yeah, building community is interesting. The thing that which has worked for us is being consistent. So it cannot be done from a thought that one fine morning I decide, so let's build a community, and then then if you are frustrated in three of your meetings, nobody responds, you start thinking, well, then it may not be working. It's not a startup business. See, community needs consistency. So you may recollect, like the time we started, 2012,
Yeah.
right? That was when we started LSP. But before that, we had Linux user groups and all. Few of those are still continuing, but at the same time, when along with LSP, I think I saw at least 5-6 different communities having similar areas of coverage came up. They are kind of non-existent today. I mean, there is obviously a meeting link in Meetup, then there are no meetings. So first of all, the first secret is being consistent. You have to be consistent and use that timeshare for doing that with the community. So if you don't have dedicated time, a quarter or a month for planning, organizing the next one, connecting with your with peers, who is going to host it and all, this will not work. So that has to be consistent from within. I mean, for LSP, you saw that we have a core group like me, Anshu, Harish, few of us, we are like regular people. So in the background, we continuously work. And that doesn't come all the time at the foreground. At the foreground, we speak to people during the events. So do you think that this topic was interesting? Or what could be the next topic that we could choose for our discussion, so that everybody learns from the experience that others have shared? And then creating a mix of it. There are multiple times while we were organizing LSP, this talk came that should we become topic specific? Okay, for example, we discuss cache. We deal with the only infrastructure. Somehow we felt that going in that line may reduce the acceptance from a wider space. Today, LSP is equally participated from the software developers, the production engineers, the SREs, the DevOps, the sysadmins. Everybody attends LSP because all of them find something for their interest in one or the other. And you just mentioned that some event may go with 20 people. Okay, where in regular events you are supposed to see 60 plus in the meetups. Even during COVID, the people had connectivity challenges. We went virtual, and actually thanks to Anshu, because he brought in the idea that otherwise we lose continuity. So we went virtual. Now we are back to hybrid once again. 10th December would be our 45th event, which would be in-person hybrid. At our source, like we are going back to Yahoo for this event. At Torrey Pines. At Torrey Pines.
Wow.
So I think consistency, listening to the community to decide what we are going to discuss, and keeping a team which don't think that they are doing something for some return out of it. It's just the community which is our return. We don't do anything out for our professional interest here.
Agreed.
That's how it is.
Okay, sure, Debansu. I think that was huge. Like what you said, you also speak to the attendees on what their learnings are and take feedback from them and decide on what topics they're interested in going forward, right? I think that plays a key role, because instead of you deciding, okay, it's like what you said, it's also various teams or groups that are involved. So it means it's a mix of things. So everybody has some learning or takeaway. I think some of the communities, like what I have known, is they decide, okay, it's going to be this topic. I don't know if they actually go back and ask for feedback from the attendees, right? And ask their interests as well, so as to decide what next can be a topic of interest, which will also bring in a lot of other people. I think apart from consistency, which was the first thing that you mentioned, I think also the second thing also plays a key role from my point of view, which I have observed, is asking people about what is it that they want to learn from this group. And otherwise, it would not be possible for you, where you have different sets of teams joining in, right? You also mentioned it's production engineers, it's developers, it's software engineers, it's security engineers, it's SREs. This is all that makes up a company, right? An organization. So you have everybody at
Exactly.
your LSP event, right? So it's great to know that
Exactly.
it's quite good happening at Torrey Pines again. Congratulations.
Yeah, we are going back to Torrey Pines. Yeah, we
Yeah,
started off there. Yeah.
great, great. Great, Debansu. I think this was very, very useful, right? Thank you so much for taking time. But before we leave, right, maybe Debansu, a couple of tips on what you have learned the most in your journey of 3 decades in the IT world, be it the government sector or the the corporate sector. What are a couple of takeaways that you would suggest for others to continue to grow in the career? And again, I think there's a third time I'm emphasizing this, saying that, you came from the dinosaur age and you're still continuing to grow and you're currently there. So how do you balance and keep moving and learn and grow?
So as we already mentioned, change is probably the only constant which stays with you. Now you need to learn. So there is a interesting theory. So I'll just mention, but not talk about it. So this is called a cognitive load theory. You learn to the extent that you can learn. Don't try to stretch beyond, but you continue to learn up to how much your cognitive load helps to sustain. Okay. That at every stage of your life, every career, every company that you work for, you need to learn. So in Amazon, we have an interesting leadership principle. We call it learn and be curious. So I came to know about this principle after joining Amazon, but then entire life it has been like learn until your cognitive load allows it. The other thing is there are failures.
Agreed.
Okay, there would be failures.
Yep.
Across your life, there will be failures. And then promoting a culture of positive failure. Okay, amongst people who surround you, whom you work with. Okay, that, well, failure is not a bad thing. So we have to learn from this failure and move ahead. So I think these are the two things. Learn up to your cognitive load persists, and then the failures are not negative things. I have to have a positivity around the failures. So that will probably keep you up and keep you running. Those are my last 2 tips. Awesome. For the resilience.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Debansu. I'm sure there are great learnings from this. I think this is the first time that I've heard about the cognitive load theory. I mean, I must have read it somewhere, but in a conversation during our talk show, there are people who've mentioned about learning from your mistakes and continuous learning and all of that stuff. But I think this kind of really rings a bell. Take in how much you can and process it, but continue to learn, right? So I think that definitely is key as well, right? You just kind of don't overload, and I think it becomes too much of a stress as well, right? So, but continue.
Exactly. You should learn to enjoy. I mean, that's what the key is. It means you don't stress while learning, and that will. Yeah. That's how you will grow.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Debansu. This is definitely super useful. Thank you so much again for taking time on a Sunday morning and doing this for me. And all the very best again for your so many more communities to build and the LSP one that's coming up on December 10th. All right.
Thanks, Sharmila. This is a nice talking to you, and I hope this helps the larger audience. Once again, you are also building a community. This is virtual, and I see your followers are growing, and obviously it should continue. Yeah. All the best for your endeavor here, and hope this is going to positively help our community, which we are part of.
Sure, definitely.
Thank you very much.
Something that I wanted to do. And I'm glad, friends and colleagues like you are actually helping me with this. Otherwise, this definitely would not have been possible. So thank you so much again, and all the very best. Let's keep connected. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
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 Hey, so that was Debansu talking about his experiences in his professional life. I'm sure there were great takeaways from this, especially about resilience, about being consistent. And I think the core thing was about the cognitive data intake, right? Keep learning, but don't kind of stress yourself. You continue to learn and intake as much as you can, but make sure you do continue to learn. I think these were the key takeaways. Do drop in your comments, if any, and do share your thoughts on how this was useful to you. Thank you so much, and keep watching Sharmila Talkies for more such conversations on career. Thank you.